So the Splatterthon continues. Glad to see you have returned. Today we have an exclusive interview with Jason Jenkins, writer of Bloody Disgusting's Phantom Limbs, as well as the host of the Scream Addicts podcast. So grab your treat of choice and stay for a while. The fun is about to begin.
Hey guys, how's it going? So, yes, Luke and I are here. We just got off the call with Jason Jenkins. So, that was a really cool interview. We're about to play it for you guys here. Thank you again to Jason for the time that he gave us. We initially planned for a half hour. He gave us almost 50 minutes of content there. So, thank you so much for your time, sir. But yeah, this is just going to be a little companion piece with my video essay that was released a few days ago, talking about his article going over the Ben Collins and Luke Petrowski Halloween script. So I reached out to Jason a few months ago when we recorded this, at the time of we're recording this. And I asked him if he'd be down to do an interview just to kind of talk about the script and just everything going on around it and the current state of Halloween. And man, I couldn't have asked for a better interview. I mean, just the way everything snowballed. And we're not just talking Halloween, we talk about all kinds of things, and his work on Phantom Limbs and everything. Like I was really impressed with it. Luke, how you feeling?
Oh man, it was a great interview. You never know what to anticipate reading the articles like Phantom Limbs, and I mean, they're of some of the highest quality, out there. I think a lot of people would agree in the horror community that it's something when they're posted, a lot of people make time within the first few days that they're out to actually check them out, regardless of whatever film it is. But you never really know what you're going to get in terms of an interview. Sometimes less is more, but like where here, he, I don't know, you can listen to him talk forever. It's like,
Seriously.
um, the guy is just so knowledgeable about every little thing, so it really shows, it shines through those articles, his knowledge in the horror space and just in general, very well spoken. I mean, the guy's a pleasure to talk to.
100.
I'm thinking about kicking him off the podcast and putting you on.
Okay, I feel you. All right, let's replace him. But without further ado, guys, here is the interview with Jason Jenkins, otherwise known as Jinx. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. All righty. So, yeah, as stated in the little intro there, guys, we have Jason Jenkins, also known as Jinx, here on the show, talking to us just a little bit about his background, his article. Jason, really, where I want to start with this is just kind of how did you get into this space? Like when it comes to like working in horror. So like where did this all start from you? I know that doing my research on you, like you kind of got into horror movies more as a teenager, you would say, and like your favorite films would probably be more like Cronenberg's The Fly and Nightbreed are some of your kind of big inspirations. But like how did you find your way into working for companies like Bloody Disgusting and everything?
Oh wow, where to begin? This could be very Oliver Twist. I was born, I grew up. I, I started writing reviews for a website way back in the late '90s called horrormovies.com, and just kind of caught the bug and loved it. Wrote there for a few years, and then went to college, and didn't really do much until probably, oh my goodness, I want to say around 2012. I started writing at Dread Central and pinning DVD and Blu-ray reviews and doing the occasional interview. And I really dug it. From there, along with Brad Bear and Mailroom Studios, we started up a YouTube show called Scream Addicts. And it was a YouTube show initially, and then it became a podcast. There have been many iterations over the years of exactly what Scream Addicts is. We just wrapped up a kind of a special project called Hammer Pub. Myself and Ali Chaplin and Paul Farrell did kind of a drinking podcast wherein we watched every Hammer horror movie there was. And at around that time, I want to say it was around 2015, 2016, I had stepped away from Dread Central and I started writing for Horror Hound magazine. And I did probably maybe a dozen issues or so of that. And a lot of those were like cover stories. They were big retrospectives on, major horror franchises that were sort of celebrating big anniversaries. And I had a great time writing for them. And from there, I just sort of pitched John Squires at Bloody Disgusting. He and I knew each other from Twitter. He had listened to Scream Addicts. In fact, he was nice enough to, give an episode or two a thumbs up and sort of point people to it, which definitely boosted our audience. So, I was friendly with John. And I want to say it was around maybe 2018. I reached out to him asking if I could possibly write something for Bloody Disgusting. And I think the first article I ever wrote was about Curtis Richards' Halloween novelization,
Hmm.
specifically the opening 6 pages, the prologue, which kind of gets into the Celtic origins of the holiday and sort of poses that Michael Myers and his mania are caused by kind of a druid curse. And I just thought all of that was kind of fascinating. I wrote an article on it and then, just kept working for them. I wrote probably for maybe a year and a half for them, just doing, bits on comic books. And I had a short lived column called Second Chances, which was about sort of giving maligned horror movies, or at least maligned by me, another chance to see if, years later I might have warmed to them. And, sometimes I did and sometimes I didn't, but it only ran for a handful of articles, I believe. And then I got around to sort of Phantom Limbs, which is the main column that I write now, and it started. I never expected it to be a column. Curiously, I knew Bernard Rose from Twitter, and around the time the trailer for the Candyman reboot came out, pre-pandemic, ages ago it seems. I thought it would be neat to talk with Mr. Rose about his ideas for a sequel. I thought I had read back in the day that he had his own ideas as to where that franchise should go. So why not see if he's willing to talk about that at length? And I was delighted when he did. And we put up the article, and I thought that would kind of be it. And some reader out there actually mentioned at one point, they were like, this should be an ongoing column. And I thought to myself, well, hey, yeah, it probably should, but I don't know. Unmade horror movies, like movies that were developed but never actually came to be, there couldn't be too many of those, right? Moron than I am. But I reached out to Todd Farmer, who I knew. He was nice enough to guest on Scream Addicts, the podcast, way back in the day, to see if he would be willing to talk about My Bloody Valentine 3D Part 2. So he did, and from there the ball sort of got rolling, and there was the occasional hiccup, but for the most part, it's been. I find that creatives are generally pretty open to talking about things that never got made because I always thought that people would be kind of cagey for legal reasons or whatnot. But in fact, if you reach out to somebody who's done a lot of work on something, only for it to never get made, only for it to not reach people, generally they're pretty open to talking about that because they want those stories out there, I think. And I've just been having a blast doing it these past few years. It got me through the pandemic, I got to say. It kept me sane. So.
No, that's awesome to hear. Like, I mean, that is a big thing. Like we were saying before we started recording here, for like Luke and myself, is just like projects that never really came to fruition. And I think like that's the beauty of the column that you write here, is just being able to shed some light on that. And like the Halloween script that I did the video essay on here is just like a perfect example of that, because it's just like something that is so different than anything that, like, in my personal opinion, that like I've seen out of this series, and I think for some people it may not be exactly what they're looking for, because people kind of tend to really shy away when you start talking about, well, we're not going to call him Michael Myers, and we're not going to have Laurie Strode or Dr. Loomis involved or anything like that. But like, I feel like in this post Halloween Kills, Halloween 2018 world that we're living in, and we're just now coming up on Halloween Ends is the time of this recording. It's just one of those things where I think that this trilogy kind of proves that this is the kind of lifeblood that I think this series needs. Because, like, reading your article, I'm just obsessed with the idea of really getting back to basics with Michael. And I know like some people also kind of chagrin at that, but it's just one of those things where it's like, I just want him to go back to being the Shape, and really getting back into the whole, like, we don't know what makes this guy tick. We don't really know what his true motivations are. And that's really what I feel like the horror of the character is. And I think your article encapsulates that beautifully just in the conversation that you had. It seemed like all the questions that you asked and everything that they were willing to give was just like really like just sent lightning bolts in my head of just like, this is exactly what I'm looking for when it comes to this. So like, do you feel that like how do you, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, how do you feel about the current iteration of Halloween and where it's going? Do you think that this is a script that we could see in the future, or do you think that we're kind of destined to keep reliving the same events over and over again with this franchise?
You know, my big hope with Phantom Limbs writing it is that one day one of the movies that I will have written about um, will actually get made. Not because of any exposure that the article might have, you know, given it, just because I every time I interview somebody about a movie that hasn't been made, I want it to get made. And I got to tell you, you know, the chances of some seem kind of slim, but in the case of this Halloween pitch by Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski, I feel pretty great about its chances. Like, I think it could stand up against any other take right now, especially considering that. So their pitch actually was formed, I think, around 2012. That was a decade ago. And it would have been the first Halloween that came after the Rob Zombie movies. And
Yes.
as they told me, you know, that pitch sort of came as a response to Zombies films that really sort of delved into the Myers mythology and his backstory. And it got mired in, you know, Michael as a young man and his mother and like all of that stuff. And it just bogged him down and made him. Now, I actually love Zombies Halloween too. I think his first movie is a little. I think it's very interesting. I don't think it's terrible, but I don't think it's a success either. But I do love his Halloween too. But we can't deny the fact that those movies strip away all of the mystique and the mystery of the character, purposefully so. It's not a mistake that, you know, Zombie made. I mean, it's very intentional, obviously, but that's where the character was by the end of that second movie. He is a man and no more, you know.
Hmm.
And what I loved about the Collins Piotrowski pitch is that they got back to basics. They stripped him down to what makes him scary, and they left all of the other stuff out. And I gotta tell you, with where the Blumhouse trilogy is going, I feel we could probably do with that iteration again, because that's totally what the David Gordon Green movies have done. You know, I actually rather liked the Halloween that we got in 2018. I like that it felt like it was kind of kind of stripping away the mythology. You know, it took away Michael and Laurie being siblings.
Hmm.
It made him more of a straight maniac than a force of evil. You know, other people can think he is this demonic force if they want, but the movie, to me, especially in that great one shot sequence in the film, there was just something about it that made it seem like he was just a maniac out for the night of his life. He is having a ball, right?
Hmm.
But then you get to Halloween Kills and they start backpedaling on that, and they start sort of cherry picking all of these elements from the sequels that they retconned out of existence. And it's like, guys, what the hell are you doing here? You know, I have no idea where Halloween Ends is going to go. I got to say, I'm not too terribly excited about it after Kills, but you know, I'll be there opening night. Who am I kidding? But after it's done, I think I almost don't want to curse it by saying this out loud, but I tweeted it, so what the hell? By mid-October, we will have the final Halloween movie in the Blumhouse trilogy. At least
Hmm.
that's what they're telling us. At the same time, we will be, you know, just in the wake of Hulu's Hellraiser reboot coming out, which is
That's where
written by
both
Ben
of us are
Collins
at.
and Luke Piotrowski. So you know what? If Hellraiser winds up killing it and it raises the profile of those guys, and if the director on the piece, David Bruckner, my God, if David Bruckner would elect to be a part of that package, could you imagine them going to Blumhouse and saying, like, look, it's time to reboot. We've got a great idea. We have a great director. Let's go this route. I would do a backflip. It would hurt, but I would do it just because I think that would be just Christmas for horror fans if they went that route. I really do.
Yeah, and I'm gonna throw this over to my co-host here for a minute because, like, when reading the article and the pitch here, look, you weren't so big on the concept of stripping away so much and going back to it, and just like, I kind of want to throw it your way to kind of say your piece on it because it's like we kind of almost have opposite feelings on this. As to where, like, I'm very enthusiastic, excited about this. Luke, where do you sit with it as a Halloween fan?
With that pitch, I mean, for me, like reading through it, when you say going back to basics, I think I hear that a lot in terms of you get into a discourse with a Halloween fan, and it's always going back to basics. So, like going through that route, yes, I agree, but it didn't strike me as anything, I guess, horribly original in that sense. In kind of going through the concept, I don't know where we kind of, as horror fans, we sit and we discuss, wouldn't this be cool or wouldn't that be cool? And I think there's one specific scene in there where he's sitting on a bench and waiting for the clock to strike like 8 p.m. or the official start of Halloween, and then he goes in and would what I guess dismantle a 911 call
A
center.
dispatch operation,
Yeah.
yeah.
And which that totally fine with me. But like when we go through, and I think they're at an abandoned super center, almost like a Walmart, I think they call it. And the idea is it becomes 8 a.m. and his night's over. Those types of things for me, I guess, where you throw around these ideas, horror fans, to say, oh, this would be interesting or that would be new and original. Um, where it almost becomes seeing it on screen, it would be like, I don't know if I actually wanted that after actually visibly seeing it. So for me, like looking at it, um, it wasn't bad, but it was something where I would say, okay, this is an interesting pitch, but I don't know if I'd actually want to see that. I could see, Twitter having a field day at the end of at the end of the credits, running to Twitter and kind of, having their way with the idea that's on screen, which we're going to get that anyway. But for me, I don't know if it really resonated.
And you see, like, that's kind of why I wanted to throw you into this, because it's just like, we have three like takes on this, in the sense of like we both feel like, Jinx and I both feel that this would be a nice shot in the arm. But then there are those people who may not be huge on an idea like this. So I want to give them kind of a platform for it. And I mean, you still said there were elements of the script that you enjoyed and
Oh
everything
yeah.
when we spoke. Yeah,
I
because
think it's an interesting take. Like for me, I don't know if I would have enjoyed it, but I mean, like looking at something like we had just seen Barbarian, where that's not for everybody, but it's an
Mhm.
interesting take. The boldness is, I think, what we do need in the horror space. And again, I mean, me and Dylan have talked about it, where a couple years ago, I would have been very, this is black or white. I either like it or I hate it. But like something like Malignant really kind of flipped me a little bit, where I've become, I guess, more open in terms of living in a horror space and saying, oh, well, this is a great horror film.
Mhm. And I guess like Jinx, really, for my next point to kind of guide us in here, is when we discuss, the legacy of this and just like this franchise, and we've had so many different avenues, and it's like it's awesome to hear that you enjoy Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 as much as you do, because again, that's another one where it's a deep point of controversy. I think for years a lot of people thought that that was just like the worst, and like some people would even say it's the worse than Halloween Resurrection, which I don't even agree with.
Insanity.
Yeah, but it is one of those things where it's like we live in this, like, and as horror fans, everybody kind of can pick their poison. And especially with a franchise like Halloween, where we've had all these drastic different takes. I think that in a lot of ways, do you think that how kind of like, I guess I'll compare this. I tend to on our show compare horror to a lot of the superhero properties, because it's kind of what's dominating the current box office in our world right now. Is how, like, with Batman, we have so many different iterations of this. I think I could see a world, and I want to know your thoughts on this, of like where we have something like this script from your article that exists, but then we could even continue on with, like, because I know another big property that's being touted right now is, will we now pick up from the Halloween 4 side of the story? Will we show what happens after that, taking out 5 and 6? Do you think we could live in a world where we kind of get to have our cake and eat it too? Because obviously other franchises are doing it. So do you think that maybe that's a route they might want to go? Because I mean, it's Michael Myers, it's Halloween. We've seen so many routes. Personally, for me, I think if we don't go this route, the route that I would like to go is going back and giving the anthology route a shot. But I just think, do you think that there's a world where we could kind of see a lot of these ideas stemming up together, or maybe even just having this script be a one-off and then they kind of go on to their own path?
I would love for that to be the case. I kind of wish Halloween would take on the James Bond approach and just do a run. And we've had the Blumhouse run, and that was a take. And we could, Collins and Piotrowski in the interview they did with me, they noted that their pitch definitely teed up the idea of sequels. Give them
Hmm.
3 movies. Let's get in and out. We want to go back to Jamie Lloyd. Let's do that because we 30 years ago, would that have worked? Maybe not. Now, today, like audiences are really savvy. Like it's a quick hop on the Wikipedia or Google or what have you to get caught up to date on whatever you need. That's even if you want it. Mainstream audiences. I used to work at a movie theater. I worked at a theater for 15 years. And I got to tell you, most kids who come out on a Friday and Saturday night, if they're going to watch a Halloween movie, all they need is the mask and the knife and the holiday, and they're good. It's not, one ticket for Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. It's just one ticket for Halloween.
Hmm.
And so I think if they were to go that route, mainstream audiences are going to be happy to have Michael back on the big screen. And if you're a dyed-in-the-wool genre fan like us, you're going to know what's up. You're going to know that we're diving into another continuity than the Blumhouse films, right? We're going back. And I think everybody would be on the same page in that regard. Now, whether or not Malik Akkad would see it that way, I don't know.
Yeah.
He's very protective of the property and understandably so. And, the franchise has not been this popular, well, maybe ever, ever since Halloween 2018. So obviously they're going to want to keep that character popular. They're going to want to keep it a prestige, franchise. I'd be very curious to see if Blumhouse sticks with it.
Mm.
Like if they, are going to continue on with the franchise in whatever form it may take. I could almost see it going from studio to studio. Let's have the Blumhouse run. Let's have the well, we had the Miramax run. I don't know who would take it now. Spyglass, maybe.
A24.
A20. Oh my God. Yeah. You know what?
Could you imagine?
A24 and the Collins Piotrowski pitch would almost be just a marriage made in heaven. Um, but yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm rambling at this point.
No
All of
problem
this
at
to
all.
say that Halloween's going to survive no matter what. And
Mm.
as much as I like the anthology idea, I don't think we're ever going to stray too far away from the guy in the white mask. But golly, would I love to see the Collins Piotrowski attempt be done? Whether it's a one-off or a trilogy or who knows what. I get so jazzed about thinking about it. And just Luke, to your point, I will say too, like I love Halloween. It's my favorite horror franchise. Well, along with Psycho. And I love the mythology. I love the I love Halloween 6. I love the Thorn cult. I adore trying to make the continuity of Halloween H2O work with 4, 5, and 6, and trying to figure out how that could, and does 3 factor in some way, even though there's a trailer or a TVA spot for the original Halloween in Halloween 3. Could it still, um I think all of that stuff is a blast. But so I don't feel negatively toward any Halloween being sort of mired in the mythology. I love it. But at the same time, what I love about the Collins Piotrowski pitch is its simplicity. It's not because I feel like any pitch has to go back to the basics. It's just in how they chose to go back to the basics that I find it fascinating. I love the idea of rendering Michael Myers um, kind of a modern myth or an urban legend or kind of this creepy pasta figure that Redditors talk about. I think there's something so chilling about that. And in a way, it kind of does what Halloween 2018 did. I think one of the smarter things that Halloween 2018 did was strip away that connection that Michael had to Laurie.
Hmm.
And in an even greater way, I think the Collins Piotrowski pitch does that by stripping Haddonfield from Michael. So now it doesn't have to be Haddonfield. He can show up in your town next year, or maybe this year even. He can be anywhere, and so everyone has to fear that day, not just some small Midwestern town. I think that's so cool, and yeah, no, I through and through, I love their pitch.
Yeah. And I kind of go in my essay towards the end. I kind of do kind of lean on the idea that when they had brought up continuing the franchise, going on with sequels, and I'm not going to sit here and explain the whole thing again, but really how I go about it is saying, like, wouldn't it be something, wonderful to see almost at the end of their script where you pick up and you follow almost a journalist and a detective, where it's almost very like I kind of akin it to more like a mind hunter or a Zodiac, in a sense of, like, Michael's gone, like he's just out and about, and we're just now following this journalist and this detective as they kind of move their way through all these murders, trying to find the connective tissue and see, like, is this, this so-called white masked killer, is this his doing or is this something else? And all of these kind of pieces lead them almost back to the original 1978 night. And that's kind of like where I would love to see that go, because again, it would just further go down this rabbit hole of, like, we are separating ourselves from what we've had before. And it's just kind of this idea of, like, we can play with different genres, we can play with different tones, and it doesn't just have to be like, I agree with you guys. I love the feeling of Halloween. I love that. And I think that, we talk about this a lot, Luke, where it's like these new movies, the one thing that they really seem to get right is the feeling of Haddonfield and the feeling of Michael Myers. And I think that it's just like they've really nailed that. But, like, I just want to see that with this idea of stripping it away, I want to kind of see him get played into different aspects, and like this whole movie would just be these two trying to piece together this this whole string of murders over the last 30 years or so, trying to figure out, like, was this him, was this not, and where does it all lead, where does it all stem to? And like I said, the climax being, we find out that he was this little boy who murdered his sister on Halloween night, and it just, like, where that kind of lands them. And it's just like, that's just kind of where I go with it in the video. But, like, do you yourself, Jinx, do you kind of have an idea of, like, because you're creative, and I mean, like, you do a lot of writing, do you, in your head canon, do you kind of see where you might take this idea, or do you just kind of hope that uh Petrowski and Collins kind of just will take it on and move forward with it in their own way?
I mean, I do definitely. Yeah, I really hope that we get to see that movie someday that they pitched. As a Halloween fan, I of course have my own ideas as to what I would do with the character. I'm still an aspiring screenwriter, so I think being a horror fan and being a writer, I think all of us sort of have those notes that we've jotted down, like how we would handle each and every major horror franchise that we've come up with, right? Like, I know what my Texas Chainsaw would be. I know what my Evil Dead would be. I know what my Halloween would be. And weirdly enough, my own Halloween would definitely be mired in the mythology. So yeah, no, but beyond that, I don't know where the franchise should go. If I had never heard the Collins Piotrowski pitch and we were coming up on this third film in the Blumhouse trilogy, I would just shrug. I would be like, I have no idea where you go at this point. Like, you've retconned all of the sequels out of existence. Do we go back into that? Do we not? Like, do we go the anthology route? And try that again. And I got to tell you, I don't think that's ever going to happen. Like, I interviewed Malik Akkad. I think Halloween 3 is kind of like, ultimately, sadly, it became kind of a cautionary tale for that franchise. And I think Carpenter's idea of turning it into an anthology is never going to happen, which is a bummer, because I think it could be cool. And I think Halloween Season of the Witch is an underloved gem. You know what? No, I take that back. It was an underloved gem 25 years ago. We've heard for the past 2.5 decades about how underloved that movie is and how it's actually great, to the point where everyone is just saying it's great now.
Yeah.
You
I
don't.
mean, that's
You'd be
true.
hard pressed to find somebody who actually would bash the movie. So it is no longer the redheaded stepchild of that franchise, I don't think, except in the sense that it didn't inspire more one-offs. But no, either way, I'm very curious to see what happens with the Halloween franchise and how it continues on. I just have no idea what that will look like, and I gotta say, I'm kind of curious.
Oh yeah. And for like kind of wrapping us up because we are getting towards the end of the time here. We kind of discussed this with you having kind of, being an aspiring screenwriter. We ourselves are aspiring screenwriters. We've got a ton of projects that we'd love to get off the ground one day. Is there anything, whether it be a book, a film, or anything that you really, and you don't have to give out your ideas or anything like that, but what is like kind of like your dream project in a sense? Would it be a film? Would it be a book, or even just a TV series? And what style of horror do you think you'd kind of go the route with? More cosmic, slasher, or just more of like a ghost story? Like what is your dream project if I could give you a budget right now and say go make your movie?
Well, I've written a lot of stuff. I actually managed to get a manager earlier this year with a script that I wrote called Facade, which is kind of a supernatural horror story, but it veers wildly from horror comedy at times to deep, dark, scary, sad, depressing horror at times. I like the idea of sort of melding, uh, um, traumatic horror with, a few lighthearted characters who stroll in halfway through and wonder what the hell is going on. It's funny, a few people who have read it, somebody once said they told me that they liked both movies that appeared in the script, because it was very much like two different types of movies that just sort of meet in the middle. And so that one's kind of near and dear, and I really hope that it can get made at some point. But I have originals that I've written that I would love to get made. I have this pair of characters that sort of recur throughout my work. They're my own Jay and Silent Bob, even though they're nothing like Jay and Silent Bob, but they sort of tied together my own personal universe of scripts. But at the same time, being a dyed-in-the-wool horror nerd, talking about earlier, what I would do with various franchises, like I would love to tackle. Okay, I daydream about two movies a lot when it comes to existing horror franchises. One, I know exactly how I would reboot the Psycho franchise,
Mm.
and I would murder to be able to do that. And two, please don't laugh. There's a part of me that is always going to be a 16, 17-year-old in the 90s growing up on neo slashers like Scream and Urban Legend and the like. And I would murder to do, and I Know What You Did Last Summer reboot, like a legacy sequel. Let's go 25 years later with, Julie James and, see where she's at now and kind of introduce an entirely new threat. And I would base it on an existing Lois Duncan novel. I would pluck out the heroine from a Lois Duncan novel and I would plunk 40-year-old Julie into her place with a new threat and sort of go from there. And yeah, other than that, I mean, like I said, I have sort of notes and half-written treatments, based on loads of different horror franchises. But those are the two that I would definitely kill to tackle.
Awesome, that's great. And Luke, I want to throw the last couple minutes off to you. Do you got any questions or anything burning for Jinx here that because I know you're a fan of his work as well. So
I'm just curious in terms of, you said you were a teenager in the 90s, growing up and, kind of going through the creation of the internet becoming a more prevalent thing in terms of like, how did you navigate that? Like the end game in terms of, yeah, I'm assuming you started in terms of wanting to be a screenwriter and then kind of maybe pivoting into horror writing. Like, as that wasn't really a thing. In the early 90s and then became a thing. Was that kind of the end game, or was that more of an opportunity to say, oh, this is an outlet for my creative space, so let me tackle some of these Blu-ray reviews into these horror articles?
That is a great question. Honestly, it's a great question, and I think it's deserving of a longer answer. But if I'm being entirely honest, really what it comes down to is it's fun. It is an outlet for me, creatively when I'm not, writing scripts or I'm not working on this or that. I kind of get jazzed about connecting with people, in that way. I just dig, reviewing movies. I dig talking with creatives about their work. And mostly I just kind of dig putting stuff out there for the community to check out. When I said I grew up in the 90s, like probably the biggest outlet I had as a fan was like message boards,
Yes.
and talking with, fans back then, where sadly, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have any number of social media back then. It was literally just very simple message boards and comment sections on, horror sites. So I feel like I never want to stray too far from that. I don't know that I will always write Phantom Limbs, but I think I'm always going to want to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. To kind of bring that content because I grew up um, in the early 2000s when forums were my kind of outlets. Oddly enough, it was professional wrestling forums, and I found like a horror thread, and that's where I found like the burning and sleepaway camp. So there was this kind of I guess a kinship in a sense where you start learning these things and kind of navigating through horror and finding you have your Friday 13th, Nightmare on Elm Streets, but then you start finding these kind of offshoots of horror. So I mean, like nowadays we have Twitter and it's so accessible. Is that something where it's just like you kind of thrive on in terms of uh, looking at like your Phantom Limbs articles, where um, a lot of them are so prevalent? I've heard them mentioned in a lot of different podcasts. And I think that goes to the quality of the writing and also the kind of topics that you choose. Is that do you kind of have that? I don't want to say stress, but kind of stress where, oh, my Halloween one just really hit. So what's the next big thing that I can really kind of choose here? Or is it kind of just throw out feelers for people and let's see what I can get, and then that's going to be my next article?
I wish I could say that it was the former, but it's definitely the latter. I never know what people are going to dig when I put it up. I mean, there's been stuff that I don't know if I should give an example. I'm going to give an example. I wrote a piece that coincided with the Matt Reeves Batman movie that
Hmm.
went up. I interviewed Daniel Waters, who is, the guy is a hero to me. I love a lot. I mean, just his writing is so damn good. And he wrote a Catwoman script that I really dug, but it takes so many big swings with that mythology, right? And I was like, even as I was synopsizing, and I wrote a lengthy synopsis, like longer than usual, simply because it was there, one, but two, I love his writing so much. I kind of wanted to hit every beat that he did in that script. So I didn't want to reduce it to 3 paragraphs. So I wrote a pretty lengthy piece on it and put it up, and I thought it would be savaged. I really did, but I didn't care because I was a fan of his and I thought it would have made a great movie. And I was like, you know what? To hell with it. We're going to put it out there and we're going to see how fans react. And for the most part, people dug it. And I was like, oh, well, that's nice. That's unexpected. I guess I don't really, I didn't expect that. Now, there was another piece that I wrote not too terribly long after that that I thought was an absolute slam dunk. I reached out to a writer named Steven Susko, and he had written this Texas Chainsaw Massacre script. It was going to be a sequel to the original 74 movie. It was basically a legacy sequel before anyone had done a legacy sequel. And it was going to be produced by James Wan, who was going to direct the first one. Toby Hooper was going to produce. Kim Hinkle was going to produce. It was going to be shot on 16 millimeter. And it was going to pick up literally the moment that the first movie ends. And he gave me everything. Like he did like this amazing interview with me where he covered every base of the project. He provided me with photographs of James Wan and Toby Hooper having dinner together, looking over James Wan's own personal concept art for what Leatherface should look like. He gave me his original treatment. He gave me the full script. He gave me like his research that he did on the Tonkawa Indians who practice cannibalism, and how they actually inspired his script. Like, I wrote this massive piece I didn't want for a thing. Even James Wan, Brad Miskett, Bloody Discussing, excuse me, God bless him, reached out to James Wan to ask if we could use the photographs. One, but two, if he wouldn't mind giving us a quote. And James Wan gave us a quote. So I wrote this thing. John Squires tells me, he's like, this is really like a masterpiece of your column. Like, this is probably as good as it's, could get. And I was like, I agree. And we put it up. And there was kind of a collective shrug from everyone. And I was like, what the hell, man? Real that nobody's doing backflips over this. Nobody's, not for me. Like, I didn't need applause for me, but look at what these guys did. Look at what we missed out on. How amazing would this have been? And it felt like just the temperature from the sort of comment section below was just kind of like, eh. And I was like, okay, that's it. I have no finger on any pulse here. I have no idea how any of these are going to be received. So I write them to amuse myself mostly. Now, I can't wait to see what people think, but I wouldn't dare ever hazard a guess after that because I know that I will have no clue.
I actually wanted to say I absolutely adore that piece of yours because I had caught wind of that, I think, on just a random Twitter conversation where someone had mentioned that there was at one point going to be a James Wan produced Texas Chainsaw Massacre trilogy. And like just kind of trying to find information about that online was just really difficult. And I would say that like your article when it finally hit, like that was a big one for me that when I stumbled across it because it was actually Joe Blow on YouTube here. They did a video on it. And then I stumbled across your article and I just was able to kind of get a lot of these details and stuff. And that's incredible that they gave you all that information and even a quote from James Wan. And to, to kind of share in this, like we're a small time YouTube channel right now. We've only been operational for a few months, but like one of our most recent podcasts, I know I spoke with Luke on this, was about dog soldiers and
Yes.
just how much like stuff going on behind the scenes with that film and the documentary of werewolves versus soldiers, and just even this piece that I found about how the original Blu-ray release was so maligned by fans from
Yeah.
Scream Factory because of the transfer, because they couldn't get the original negatives. So like I went in deep. Like I wrote like maybe 6 or 7 pages when normally, what would you say, Luke? Our podcasts are maybe 3 to 4 pages.
Yeah.
If we're on on an average, but I was going in really deep on that one, and I remember telling him like I think this is really going to hit because the 4K is about to drop and everything, and normally we're cresting just a little over 100 or just a little below 100 on some of our better episodes. And that one, I remember 2 weeks in, we were at 40 views, and I was just like, I threw my arms up in the air, like, man, I don't know what the hell to do here because I really thought that was going to be a big one. So, like, I share that with you. But again, that piece was wonderful on that. And that is something that I look back on and just think, what a shame, especially compared to what we have gotten so many
Yeah.
times with Texas Chainsaw Massacre and everything, that it's just like, I really wish that we would have gotten that because I think that James Wan, just even as a producer, is just one of the best people working in the horror space right now and just able to get projects off the ground. So it's just one of those things where it's like, man, with Toby Hooper's involvement and just all the work that was into it, that's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And the whole thing is so heartbreaking because if you actually follow the line from that article to, I have another column. I haven't written too many articles for it, but it's called Larval Inc., which is about.
I was just reading your Deep Blue Sea one on that.
Thank you very much. So for listeners out there, Larval Inc., rather than covering movies that were developed but never made, it's about movies that were made but started out wildly differently at the script stage. And so I kind of chart the differences between the original script and the resulting movie. So if you go from the Steven Susko Texas Chainsaw, where his story leaves off, which is him basically leaving the project because, my God, the people he was working with just,
Mm-hmm.
then the project gets passed to Marcus and Sullivan. and they actually wrote a script with all of Lionsgate's weird sort of, rules in place. No cannibalism. Who would think in a Texas Chainsaw movie that there would ever be cannibalism? But they gave them all these rules, and they wrote a script that absolutely kicked ass. Like, it was astonishingly good. And yet, so we went from a Steven Susko, James Wan, Toby Hooper potential trilogy. That didn't work. So that project went to um, Marcus and Sullivan, and they wrote an amazing script. And then the movie got made, and what we got was Texas Chainsaw 3D.
Mm-hmm.
It blows my mind. Like, how do you have not one but two amazing takes after all of your bullshit, and you still just give us what we got? Like, it's heartbreaking. And I will
Yeah.
say, I don't even hate Texas Chainsaw 3D. I think the date thing, the age thing is infuriating
Mm-hmm.
in a way, but otherwise I think there is some fun stuff in that. But when you compare it to what we could have gotten twice over, yeah, that's the heartbreak in writing these columns, is seeing what might have been and knowing that they never were.
Yeah, and comparatively, I would say, like, at one point, Texas Chainsaw 3D, I was like, oh man, this is worse than anything they've done, like watching it when it came out. But then, we have like Leatherface after that, the direct to DVD one, and then this most recent one. It's just kind of one of those things where you look back on it and you're just like, oh, it's not that bad. Like, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. The jump, like the timing does not make any sense. But like, it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, it could have been worse. It's been worse. So
Yeah,
that's
it's weird. I am you will run me off now, but I actually really dug their Leatherface. I like that it did something wildly different. And I really dug the new Netflix Texas Chainsaw. Weirdly enough, I never would have expected this, but Texas Chainsaw is a franchise that just, I can't hate it. You know what? I like Halloween more than Texas Chainsaw. I adore Halloween. I love Halloween, but there are installments of Halloween that I will throw stones at.
mm,
Whereas with Texas Chainsaw, I mean, the first movie is a masterpiece. I think we all agree on that.
yep.
And then, the quality definitely varies. But I mean, to me, Texas Chainsaw 3D is about as bad as it gets, and it's still highly watchable to me. I will take Texas Chainsaw 3D over Halloween Resurrection any day of the week.
Agree with you.
And here's the thing, I even like some of Halloween Resurrection. Not much. Good God, not much. But it's honestly in Resurrection's defense.
Yeah, I don't know if I can agree with you on Resurrection, but I'm here for it. I'm always interested to hear other people's takes on these movies when it comes to this, because that's the beauty of this community, is that it's really anybody can like what they like, and they can tell you why they like it. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're wrong for liking something, that you found something more in this than I did. And I that's really the mantra that I kind of have with the most recent Halloween movies, because it's like, I don't, they upset me, and they aren't made for me. They aren't what I was hoping for. But at the same time, I'm not going to fault anybody for saying like, oh, this is great, this is everything I've ever wanted. And I think, Luke, you feel pretty much the same way on that, when you agree.
Yeah, I think the horror community is such an interesting animal in the sense where, you could have this interplay fighting with, oh, I absolutely hate Texas Chainsaw 3D, and there can be fighting amongst themselves, and then as soon as someone that is a non-horror fan comes in and tries to trash it, then it's like, oh, there's a kinship there where it's like, uh I think us finding horror and relating to each other on that horror level, that it's such a family kind of element there where we all kind of just join together, and like Resurrection. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Resurrection, but I like the idea, the concept that they had originally to kind of restart things. So I think being a horror fan, you can not like a film, but you can respect the attempt and find something very unique in each different film, whether you like it or don't.
I agree. I agree with that. It's funny that you mentioned like potential outsiders coming in and knocking something. That's almost true if they praise it too. When we start hearing terms like elevated horror,
Mhm.
it's like, hey, you. random writer for Variety. Let's not trash the entire genre just because you found a single movie that you liked. Knock it off. Get off my lawn.
Yeah, and it's like those same people that are just sitting there saying, "Oh, Hereditary is like, the next great, Exorcist or whatever." Like they'll talk about that all day, but they won't even give a movie like The Empty Man a shot. And, it's just one of those things where it's like you got to understand that those people are just playing in a different ballpark than we are, where it's like I firmly, and I think our podcast and kind of just how we've been working with this genre for the last few years personally between Luke and I has just kind of opened my door to just being like, I will watch anything. I'll give anything a shot at least once, just because at the end of the day, I respect this genre. I think what you can do with it is, it's one of the few genres that you can really mix with anything. Like you can have a horror Western or a horror drama, like I know a lot of people think like Don't Look Now. That's a straight up drama for like 90% of it. And then towards the end, it gets into pure horror. And, I think it's a beautiful film. So it's just one of those things where it's like, you can really interject that into anything. And I think that's beautiful. And it's like you can't say the same for like as much as I love him. You can't do that really with like a superhero thing. Like you can have superheroes with a lot of drama like The Dark Knight or Logan, but you can't just like interject it into anything and have it work as well as it does with horror.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. It's far easier to imagine taking a little person in a raincoat and a razor and plunking them down into the middle of Kramer versus Kramer than Superman. But
Exactly.
that said, I would watch the hell out of both.
Yes. But all right, I think we got to wrap it up here for you. Thank you so much, Jason, for coming on here and talking with us and just going a little deeper on your article. Again, you guys can find him on Bloody Disgusting with his articles for Phantom Limbs. But Jason, I'm going to give you the floor here, man. Whatever you want to plug, whatever you got going on right now that you want to talk about, feel free to let our audience know about it.
Oh gosh, okay. So Dylan, Luke, thank you both very much for allowing me on. Right now, yeah, you can catch me at Bloody Disgusting. I write Phantom Limbs, mostly Phantom Limbs. I also have a few other columns that are kind of dormant right now, but I hope to bring those back to life at some point soon. Otherwise, if you want to check out my back catalog of podcasts, you can go to screamaddicts.com. Otherwise, please just catch me on Twitter. You can find me. My handle is @Jinx1981. That is JINX1981.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us. And this has been such an honor and a pleasure to have you on here and just all the topics we got to cover. I played this interview 100 times over in my head and just like all the ways it could have gone wrong. But like, I'm very happy with just everything we were able to do. And you really are just a wealth of knowledge, sir. So thank you.
Oh gosh, thank you both so much.
Alrighty. Thank you guys. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into the interview. If you made it this far, obviously you finished it. Again, thank you to Jason for coming on here and just giving us a wonderful conversation. I absolutely adore his articles, Phantom Limbs, as I've stated many times. And just really the amount of knowledge, again, cannot be understated that this guy has. I think like just being able to even talk about that Texas Chainsaw Massacre stuff, the Clive Barker stuff. I mean, everything that he brought up was just wonderful. And Luke, you said it best in the intro here. Like you could listen to this guy talk for hours.
Yeah, I mean, what a pleasure it was. To be honest, it's one of those things where we're gonna have to find excuses to bring him on as many times as we can, because just this short time, what was it, maybe 50 minutes, but it's like we picked up so much just from only a few questions that we were able to really throw out, because he's able to kind of connect one thing to the next. He answers questions before you even ask them. So, and that's what I absolutely love. It's like that's why you listen to podcasts. That's why you read articles, to get that knowledge. It's something that I think it's a blessing and a curse here with the internet at our disposal like that. But when you get valuable little grains like this, it's such a breeze to sit through.
100%. And thank you again, Jason. Again, guys, you can follow him at his Twitter that he mentioned, so you guys can check it out there and just keep up with him, because I mean, like going back on some of his Scream Addict stuff and all the stuff that he has posted, of course, his articles on Bloody Disgusting. The guy is seriously a wealth of knowledge and just a pleasure to just enjoy his work overall. So yeah, that's gonna wrap that up for here. Obviously, we are in the heat. We are in the midst of our Splatterthon, as we are
Getting
calling it, the
wild.
Halloween Splatterthon. Yes, we have been having a lot of fun with releasing these videos. The essay was great. It was definitely a lot of work and a lot of stress on my part to get right, but I'm hoping that it's working out for you guys and you're enjoying it. And as well as the Better Off Dead segments that we've been releasing. And yeah, so just keep up with us on this all month long. We're doing all this special stuff, and we got way more coming down the pipeline for you guys. So yeah, please enjoy, and thank you for checking out the interview. Thank you to Jason again, and yeah. Other than that, if you guys want to keep up with us, as usual, you can always find us at Twitter and Instagram at SplattercastPod, as well as TikTok, where you can find us at Splattercast. So, we're posting our reactions or things like that on there, all of the good stuff, so you can kind of see what's going on our day to day. As well as, if you haven't already, we are doing our best to reach 100 subscribers at this moment in time. So please, we're recording this ahead of time, so I don't know where exactly we'll be sitting, but if we're close or if we've surpassed it, thank you guys so much. And I hope we can do it. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. And Luke, you got anything for the fine folks?
Oh man, it's already been a wild ride here in October. Um, Leprechaun 4 in space. I mean, there what a kickoff, but a lot more to come. So stick with us. We have a lot more out here to scare you, but in a positive way.
100%. So thank you guys. And remember, as always, stay scared.